Everybody ready? Ready?
Yeah.
All right, listen.
It's your weekend show.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
With Bob Bierman.
It's great.
And welcome to your weekend show. I'm your host, Bob Bierman. I'm so glad you're spending some of your busy weekend time with me. This program, I have several thoughts that I want to share with you. But to open the program, it's hard to believe that here in the United States, later this week, we celebrate Thanksgiving. And I can imagine all the people that'll be traveling all over this country to be with family and friends at this time of the year. I know in a far different time many years ago, my late wife and I would often fly to see family up north. And then as we got a little bit older, we had more Thanksgivings at home, and everybody has their own set of traditions at this time of the year. And for many of us, later this week, we begin the countdown toward Christmas. So a lot to keep in mind as we suddenly are coming to the end of this year of 2019. And where did this year go? Over the past several weeks, I've been thinking about several things, and I want to share just a few very important thoughts that are on my heart and my mind. One of these thoughts really has to do with the direction and the future of this radio program. I realize that coming up in March of 2020, we will celebrate our 5th anniversary of producing your weekend show. If you're a relatively new listener to the program, maybe you listen on podcast, maybe you listen from the website, but I know there's still some that listen via international shortwave. We are on 2 international shortwave facilities. One is the Voice of Hope in Zambia, in the eastern part of Africa, covering pretty much the entire continent, and also from the facilities of WRMI in Okeechobee, Florida. Now, when this program first started airing, way back when, we aired on 3 different frequencies back in 2015. We were on the frequency of 5850, 7730, and also 9395 kilohertz. And we were on at a pretty decent time for shortwave listening. Over the years, the number of airings of this program and frequencies has gone down a little bit. And sometimes I wonder if it's really worth the effort of doing the program any longer on any kind of domestic radio. Is it worth doing it for international shortwave? Or should the program just change direction? And that's where I need to hear from you. I look at the amount of time that it takes to produce this program and get it ready for air, and I would just love to know if it's a program that you are listening to on shortwave or on domestic radio. You're my only feedback, because see, in the world of international shortwave, there are no Arbitron ratings, there's no Nielsen ratings. You're the ones that let me know that you listen. And that's why I would encourage you, if there's any chance that you can, to send me an email. And my email address is pretty simple. It is bob@yourweekendshow.com. That is bob@yourweekendshow.com. If you go to our website, yourweekendshow.com, you can just click the email link, and these emails you send will come directly to me. I'm looking at the things that I'm working on, a number of projects that are, I think, very important. And so as I try to use my time wisely, if you listen to last weekend's program, I talked about using our time wisely and not missing missed opportunity. Sometimes we can be so enthralled in the things that we think we have to do that when something we really need to get done comes along, we're overly burdened with wasting our time on things that are not really providing anything of tangible value. And so that's why I need to hear from you if this radio program, as a radio program, is of value or is it not? Is it something you listen to only as a hobby, as you're looking for other stations? And let's be honest, in the shortwave world, as I have learned, there are a lot of you that listen only to get a QSL card. This is a hobby, and the content for a number of you is irrelevant. And some are looking for content that is too expensive to provide. It's just the nature of the radio business here in the 21st century compared to 20, 30, 40, even 50 years ago when I got started, literally in the radio business. Hard to believe that this coming year of 2020 will mark literally 50 years since I first spoke on the radio, on microphone, as a radio announcer, as a young 16-year-old. My, how time has flown. And so I'm looking at the things that I'm trying to get done in life that are becoming increasingly important. And time becomes that precious commodity that once it's spent, it's gone. And it's how we use that time, as I explained last week. There's something that has really been eating at me. And the term, the only word I can give for it is education. The word education. What I'm about to say may offend some people. And frankly, I don't care if it does, but I'm going to say it anyway. In my lifetime, I have watched the quality of public education in the United States go downhill. Let me say it again. In my lifetime, I have watched the quality of public education in the United States go downhill. And in speaking to friends that I have around the world, the same is true in many other parts of the Western world. Let me give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. The school system where we live in Florida is the St. Lucie County school system. And they love to brag on their website that they have a better than 98% graduation rate, and how vastly superior that is to just 40 years ago, when it was nowhere near that high, or 50 years ago, when a lot of people after the age of 16 would drop out of high school and take jobs. And now these school systems brag about their incredible graduation rates as they ask for more tax money to fund their schools. Let me throw a little bit of cold water on that for just a second, because this is something I don't know second or third hand. This is something that within our own family, I know firsthand. I know firsthand of a student who was perpetually lazy. I know firsthand of a student who, frankly, didn't care about getting a decent education. I know they had certain difficulties in their life, but so do a lot of us. And that student decided they didn't want to go to school. And so the school came up with a special program where instead of being in school from, got to be at school by 7:30 in the morning, and you don't leave and get home till around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they tailor-made a special program for this above 16-year-old individual to be in school 2 hours a day from 10 till noon. And no, there was no online classes. There was no homework. These were just basic courses, not even including basic algebra. These were essentially fifth grade classes normally designed for, shall we say, special needs students. And for the next year and a half, that's what that student did. A little over 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week of being in school for a couple of classes. And this past May, that person graduated from high school, complete with a high school diploma, and even got to where, back in my day, back in the 70s, We all wore the same kind of graduation gown. And a handful of people had these cords, these colored ropes around their neck, indicating the fact that they had academic honors or major achievements. They had done something special. And only a handful of the students graduating, I remember, had such honors for the Honor Society or whatever the case may be. And here, as this individual graduated, they all had these wonderful colored cords around their neck that mean nothing. It makes for a great photograph. But it's a fake high school graduation because these individuals do not have the kind of math skills that somebody 40 years ago would get graduating high school. They don't have the mathematical skills of somebody graduating high school 40 some odd years ago. They don't have any depth of American history that people that graduated high school 44 years ago. And in some cases, with many of these high school diplomas, they will find they can't even enter into a college unless they go to a community college and essentially take a bunch of courses to make up for the ones they failed to take in high school. But as far as the school system is concerned, they have a 98% graduation rate. So give us more of your tax money to do even more lousy work on your behalf. Now, I know some of you are saying, aren't you being a little bit hard on the public school system? It's not that way everywhere. You're right, it isn't. But increasingly so, it is. In places that 20 years ago, I would have said the public schools are still good. I can't say that anymore. I would say when you get into bigger metropolitan areas, teaching has been reduced to the lowest common denominator. Discipline in many classrooms is non-existent. It's all about achieving numbers. A couple of weeks ago, I was away on a trip. As many of you know, about 2 weekends ago, I had to play a repeat program because I didn't have the time to get one done before heading up to Virginia. And there I spent some time, spent a day at a private school in Virginia that believes in what is called a classical education. This school has classes from kindergarten through the 12th grade. There are about 100 students now, and it is growing. The tuition is not outrageous, but it's not inexpensive either. And there are parents that are so concerned about their children's education that they work hard and they sacrifice to ensure that their children learn something of tangible value. I'm looking at students that understand things that the average high school student doesn't know, but these students are in the 5th and 6th grade. And their depth and their knowledge of foreign language, of Latin, of history, of mathematics, is far in excess of their public school counterparts. From the material I was reading and looking at and some of the stuff that I saw the high school kids using, these were things that I was learning in college, and that was like 45 years ago. It's not that our children are less capable than we were 50 years ago of anything. We have more resources at our fingertips today than we could have ever conceived of having just a half century ago. Our wealth of online knowledge is like nothing we've ever seen. You know, back in my day, if I wanted to do some research, I had to go to either the school library or the public library and spend time with the Dewey Decimal System looking for books and material to which I had to read and find and go through. I couldn't go to a computer, a tablet, or even my cell phone. There was no such thing as a cell phone. And type in on a search engine something and have it pop up before my very eyes in less than a thousandth of a second. We had to do it the hard way. And maybe that's part of the problem today, that we have it a little bit too easy. We don't have a whole lot of effort into a lot of the things that we do. Let me just digress and take a little side journey. I'll be right back to the important stuff. It shows up in so many aspects of our lives. You know, when I was 18, actually when I was 17 going on 18, I headed out to go to school and pay my own way and, take care of my needs. And this is before there was anything called a microwave oven in every home. We didn't have a whole lot of processed or prepared foods. And honestly, most of what we called TV dinners back in those days in that little metal tray were awful, and I wouldn't eat them. So I had to learn how to cook. And cooking can take time. You have to prepare food. You got to cook it. You got to watch it. You don't just pop it in and wait till something dings in a minute and eat. It may take a half hour or more to prepare something. Sometimes you have to bake something for 45 minutes. It could take an hour or so to prepare something decent to eat. But today our young people are used to instantaneous everything. Instant food, and most microwavable, preparable foods you buy in the store today is just garbage. It is absolute biological garbage, and we're feeding this to our kids. I think the ingredients I find on most dog food is vastly better than the stuff we're feeding our teenagers that comes in a can or a box or a package or frozen that we just throw into a microwave and have the microwave waves just vibrate until it gets hot. What's happened to our food? We've also become more of a society that is a disposable society. We produced more waste and garbage that fills up landfills than we ever did 50 years ago. It's all the packaging. We're lazy. We have become increasingly lazy. And to finish my little side trip here, in recent weeks, my wife and I have really thought about the foods that we buy. Now, we've always tended to cook, but we're getting extremely fussy now. We read the labels like we've never read them before, and things like low fat or added sugar are no longer purchased or in our household. We virtually never buy anything like soda, like a Pepsi or a Coke. We just don't buy them except on the rarest of occasions. In other words, it's not part of our regular diet. I think we bought a 2-liter some kind of soft drink, and I think most of that 2-liter is still around after a month or so, and before long it'll probably lose its fizz. It was just for a specific purpose, for a gathering. And we really don't eat that stuff anymore. When you become 65, and if you are thankfully like I am in good health, you want to keep that good health as long as you can. And I've been looking at the foods that I've been eating over the last, 30 years. I guess I'm fortunate. From the time that I was out on my own and in my first marriage, we didn't eat any convenience foods. We just barely, it was just rare. I mean, it was like out of necessity, not, fast food places. No, I never have liked fast food much at all. It's a rare treat to have French fries for me. I mean, you can count it on one hand the number of times in a year. And then I see people that are in their 30s and 40s now that eat this stuff every day. They eat processed food every day. They order online things like pizza all the time coming to their house because we're too lazy to cook. We have somebody deliver us a piece of dough and call that dinner. We have children that just simply do not understand what good food is. They have been ruined, literally, on destructive foods. So, that doesn't help either when you're trying to give your children an education to have them nutritionally deprived from what the body needs. And we see young people today, by the age of 24, having health problems that used to be seen by people that were 74. More cases of diabetes, obesity, skin that breaks out, unexplained stomach issues, for lack of a better word. And I truly believe it's part of our lifestyle and part of our diet. I said before, we have all this technology at our fingertips, all this knowledge we can acquire in seconds versus spending hours looking and digging and verifying. Now we just assume because we pushed a button or said a few words to our phone and our assistant brings it to us. And there's some issues with that we're going to get into in just a couple of minutes. And then I looked at these students at this school in Virginia where I spent a day. I also saw something in them that I don't see in many of our young people today. There were smiles on their faces and joy in their eyes. Let me say that again. There were smiles on their faces and joy in their eyes. A lot of kids today, now these kids are a little different. Their parents really care about education. Do they have cell phones? Yeah, a lot of them do. Do they live on their cell phones? No, they don't. Do they all have unlimited Netflix accounts? Nope. They make good use of their time. I talk about that individual before that managed to graduate high school without really getting a high school education. And I can tell you from firsthand knowledge that individual used to spend 5 to 8 hours a day binge watching Netflix. That was her school. And how many other young people fall into that category? Many parents don't want to admit that their children are not really cutting it like they had to, or their grandparents did. And I worry about the future of our nation and our Western world and our world in general. Because some of these students, not all, but a significant number are having a difficult time making the transition from this sheltered life where everybody wins and gets a trophy to the real world. It wasn't about a year ago, maybe a little longer now. My wife and I went into a well-known place to pick up a sandwich. We were doing some travel, so we had to, we didn't have the ability of cooking our own food, and we didn't want fast food per se, and so we went to this well-known sandwich shop that prides itself on all the natural ingredients, but also on being extremely fast with your service and getting the order correct. And we basically ordered a very simple Italian submarine sandwich, which means meat, vegetables, cheese, a little oil and vinegar, no mayonnaise, no nothing else. And what should have been in our hands in about a minute took about 6 or 7 minutes. And when we got our sandwich, the order was totally wrong. And I observed something in that particular place. By the way, it was a JJ sandwich shop, if you've heard that, the freaky fast place. And here was the problem. All the young people that were working that afternoon were busy staring into their telephones and not paying attention to the customer's order. And I'm the customer. And thus the order is wrong. And they were all bent out of shape that they had to remake it. Maybe if they would put their phone down when somebody else is paying for their time, I would have had my sandwich done right the first time. And this is becoming a problem. The cell phone is a wonderful tool, but to many it's becoming a master of their lives. You've seen it, I'm sure. I see it every day. I find myself doing research on it more than I probably should. I'm also learning not to trust every search engine out there. A lot of you like Chrome. I'm beginning to dislike it because of its parent corporation that has decided what they want you to learn about and see. I have no love at all any longer for Google. Honestly, I don't trust them. I don't trust Facebook any longer. Never really did. But these things that so many millions of us, hundreds of millions of us use every day, they're manipulating your life. So getting back to the school, and this is what I want to talk about. This is one of the projects that I'm deeply concerned about moving forward. How do we provide alternative education to our young people and get them out of the public indoctrination centers we call public schools? In all honesty, a lot of people cannot afford financially, even when there are some scholarships, to send their children to a private school for 12 plus years and then have to deal with college as well. Many people simply can't afford it. I understand that. I'm thankful that there are those of means who, because of their hard work or because of their career choices, found themselves in a unique position where they could. But that's not always the case, and it's not really the fault of the parents. It's just the way the world works. And the world, as you know and I know, is often not fair. So what other things can we do? What are the projects that I'm trying to get involved with? I'm talking to people that are professional educators with many, many decades of experience. I am talking to people that understand the online landscape. How can we develop an educational system to either work in conjunction with established schools, work in conjunction with homeschool groups or parents or individuals, to assist in providing a quality education that you simply cannot find in the public indoctrination system? I really worry about what our young people are being taught today in our public schools. It is oftentimes politically one-sided. It is often anti-Christian. It often mocks the values of the parents. It promotes religions like Islam over Christianity. Can't even talk about Christianity in most public schools. They don't even acknowledge days like Good Friday and Easter or Christmas even exist for fear of offending somebody, somehow, somewhere. They dare to explain to your children to explore their sexuality at young ages without your permission, telling them that gender is fluid. It's funny, schools spend so much time being an experiment in culture and less about educating the basic building blocks we need to be able to be critical thinkers in our own right. And so much of my effort going forward is going to be to work with computer programmers, those that have developed online educational portals, those that are actually educators, to be able to put together an affordable and viable alternative to the public indoctrination centers we call public schools. I look at children today, and I understand something from my own youth. All of us as teenagers are naturally rebellious. I get it. They were way back in Socrates' time. They talked about the incorrigible teenagers that would talk back, that didn't listen, that knew everything. I lived in that realm too. No doubt about it. However, like in Socrates' day and in mine, when I graduated high school, I had a working knowledge of American history. When I graduated high school, I had a working knowledge of the English language and some of the greatest literature ever written. When I graduated high school, I had a good understanding of scientific principles and methods, and not an indoctrination to opinion being called fact. When I graduated high school, I had a working knowledge of algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and calculus, to which, by the way, especially algebra and trig, I used a lot of in the broadcast engineering business and design. It's something you definitely use in the real world. Unlike a couple of people that I know, as I mentioned, the one that graduated high school, that can't even do basically first or second week ninth grade algebra to this day. We have fallen a long way from where we once were in terms of education. And honestly, I worry about the generations coming. They're going to find it more difficult because they're going to become more dependent upon their devices and things telling them what to do, telling them what to think. People that lack a reasonable education. I look at how I changed in the first several years of my working life. At least I had the wherewithal from my high school education to appreciate what I was learning in both tech school and college. And I made good use of that time and was a good student. I became even a better student in my electronics school, and then when I went on to college for communications, because I had to pay for it. And when something is free, sometimes you just take it for granted. So I'm working diligently to provide a much-needed resource. There are a lot of them out there, and a lot of them very good. But there is, in my opinion, and I hate to use this term, but I'll use it for lack of a better, there's a huge marketplace looking for material as an alternative to our indoctrination centers that we call our public education. One of the most awesome responsibilities of being a parent and even being a grandparent is the education entrusted to us of the generation and generations that are behind us and also ahead of us. We learn from those behind us, and we're supposed to be instilling this knowledge into the next generation. And what I've been seeing over the last, 30 years is an erosion of the quality of that education. It is social justice warriors. It's eco-warriors. It's less of an emphasis on old white guys And mathematics has been obscured by Common Core and other just decimations of something so simple. We need to restore education, or we become brain numbed to believe anything. You know, if you have nothing to defend your position, if you just accept what you're told, we've seen that. I see it a lot these days in the public school system. They just assume everything they're told is fact, and quite often it isn't, because they now lack critical thinking skills, where they can't connect the dots. They can't add up the simple numbers to know maybe what they're reading is wrong. Maybe what they're being told is not exactly true. But they don't challenge, and instead they just entertain their lives away on their phones with Netflix and other entertainment venues. Okay, this is your weekend show, and I'm your host, Bob Bierman. Let me kind of remind you of where we are. As I started the program today, I wonder about, is doing this radio show in the current format, being on the radio, something that I should consider keep doing? Oftentimes, this program can take quite a bit of time to prepare, to think about, produce, edit, and then distribute, along with maintaining the website and other things, and trying to promote the new program. I need to know if you're really listening on shortwave in particular, or if you're truly listening on domestic radio. I need to know. Because maybe next year I need to take the time that I'm putting into this radio show and put it into something else. Maybe it's time just to do a shorter, more frequent podcast. I know that people are listening to this program in podcast form. And if you'd like to know more about that, you can find out where the program is currently being distributed at yourweekendshow.com. That is yourweekendshow.com. I've been using Spreaker for a couple of years, SoundCloud, YouTube, believe it or not, and I'm noticing that I'm getting an increased following through what's called Anchor FM. That's Anchor, like a boat anchor, Anchor FM, like radio, like an FM radio, Anchor FM. And they push the program out to iTunes and other locations as well. And I've been noticing a gradual uptick in listenership online. And I'm also noticing I don't get as many emails for the on-air shortwave version of the program as I did maybe a year or two ago. Now, I also recognize that the number of airings this program currently has is a lot less than it used to be. And in some cases, depending where you're listening in the world, and not some of the most opportune times to listen. I understand that. However, because of commitments that these radio stations have to other programmers, it's not always possible to get the kind of times and frequency that I would love to have for this program. So I need your thoughts and suggestions. What would you do if you were me? I know that there are some regular listeners out there, and I appreciate that. But right now, more than ever before, in the almost 5 years of doing this show, I need to know if you're listening on radio, online, on international shortwave, or from the website. Those bits of information will mean the world to me moving forward. Now, how do you contact the program? Go to the website, yourweekendshow.com. That is yourweekendshow.com. Easy address, yourweekendshow.com. If you are a Facebook user, yeah, I know Facebook is what it is, but we use it. And just do a search, for Your Weekend Show. Make it one word. We pop right up. That's one of the fastest ways, if you're a follower, to know when the new show is ready for the week. And some of the information about what we're thinking will be posted in the days that are forthcoming as I debate whether this program should sustain as an on-air. Does it need to be on shortwave? Would you think it better served if we were to start seeking out some domestic radio partners in the United States that would air this program and we could reformat it to their needs? It's one possibility I've thought about. What say you? Has the time come to begin to wind this venue down as I begin to spin up other alternative venues for a program? There's so many things on my plate later this winter when we are in Florida, and then again in the spring when we come back up here to Georgia, both in education and ministry work, that are going to be taking a lot of my time. I can't give all the details yet, but I will on maybe next weekend or the weekend after as we get into the month of December. But right now, as I begin to think about 2020, I need to know what you think about this program. I know that this program has had an impact on many people's lives. I've read a lot of emails over these almost 5 years that tell me as such. But when I realize the number of airings is not as many as it used to be, a change in the technical landscape, maybe it's time to adapt the program. That's why I want to hear from you. You can email me directly at bob@yourweekendshow.com. That's bob@yourweekendshow.com. Would you take the time and let me know that you're listening to this radio program?
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, their father's hell did slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they picked, the one you know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry, so just look at them and sigh, and know they love you. And you of tender years can't know the fears that your elders grew by, and so please help them with your youth. They seek the truth before they can die. Teach your parents well, their children's hell will slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they picked, the one you know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry, so just look at them and sigh.
Hard to believe that song is around 50 years old. Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and teach your children. We've been talking about that, teaching our children. Our children are one of the greatest resources that we have, one of the greatest gifts that we could possibly have. Yet for too many of us, we're so wrapped into our careers and ourselves, and our time is just so eaten up by our jobs, our commitments, and our hobbies, that oftentimes our children become the casualty. We send them off and warehouse them to daycares and public schools and activities. You know, I don't want to get into politics here per se, but something that one of the candidates running for president here in the United States talked about, maybe we need to keep schools open till at least 6 o'clock in the evening, so these students have a place to stay. Because, see, the parents are so busy with their careers and their lives, they don't have time for their children. So let the state do it. Let the state just raise your kids for you. I read something the other day, and this is from an educator in Texas, and I saw this, so the first thing I do, I'm one of those kind of people that doesn't believe everything somebody sends me that on the internet. And so you need to go dig a little deeper, and oftentimes you'll find out many of these little things people are posting are not true. And so I'm very cautious. But this was an educator in Texas, in, I believe, Houston, Texas area, talking about that parents should not be the one raising their children. Let the schools do it. It's a community response to raising your children. After all, and this person was criticizing many of the values that many parents hold. He thought the schools should be the one to decide about things like, church, and why it may be not important, or attitudes on sexuality or anything else. Let the schools raise your children to be more open-minded. Let me translate that for you. Let the state rule over your children's lives so they will do as the state demands in exchange for certain sensual freedoms. That's what it really boils down to. And that's why I'm so concerned about education today and providing an alternative. Now, I'm sure somebody out there is already saying I must be some complete idiot, and everything I'm saying is not true about the public schools. Well, then explain to me how somebody at the age of 18 graduated from high school that can barely do 5th grade math, 5th grade reading, 5th grade science, 5th grade history, but they have a diploma. And they're one of the 95% that graduated. It makes you wonder about the 2% that didn't. There must be a lot more to the story than we know. And so, yes, I'm deeply concerned about education, and I'm going to be spending a lot of my time over the next several years working, as I said before, with those that are educators, those that are experienced, those also that are experts in their field in technology. So maybe not everybody can have the classroom experience that these students I saw in Virginia did, but they can have the next best thing. And most important, not to do it in isolation, because maybe some of the coursework you're doing at home, on a screen, online, with a teacher and other students, so it can be affordable. And also put together a social network of like-minded individuals that care about their children's education and their social skills. And so they get together on a regular basis to give them a wholesome life experience. I am truly dedicated to this cause moving forward. And that's why I need to know if this radio program in its current form is of value to you, because it is taking time. It is taking some significant time now in producing this radio program going forward. And as I stated so much last week, I don't want to miss the hour of visitation on this project, this time of opportunity that may come and go. And I don't want to be wasting my time on endeavors that are truly not worth the time and the investment that they take. that's why hearing from you is more vital this week than at any time in the last 4.5, almost 5 years since this program began. Will this program be with us in 2020? It's really up to you. Because if I decide that we're going to go a different direction with the program, I need to make plans and begin to work out details. If doing a shorter version and podcast of this program or video or something would be more helpful to you, let me know that too. I know the world is changing. I have a lot of friends in the radio business that go back almost a half century. It's a long time when you think about it. And here in the United States and Canada in particular, the radio industry that I knew in the 1970s is not the radio industry of today. The local advertising revenue is not what it used to be. A lot of stations now depend more on automation and syndicated programming just so they can afford to stay on the air. I know a lot of people complain, we need live radio announcers, but if there's not enough money to pay them, you're not going to have any live radio announcers. Or somebody says there's too many commercials. Well, without what commercials you hear, they can't pay the power bill. Radio stations were not built, they're not built just to be, free entertainment. There is a cost to operating them. And with shortwave, there's a huge cost when it comes to power. So I understand. I thoroughly understand. And I know this business has been changing since it started almost 100 years ago in the 1920s. It's made many a change over time, and it will continue to do so. Radio has reinvented itself multiple times. And we can sit there, and some of my friends that are old radio announcers like I was, they lament the days when, it would all be great if we just brought back the live disc jockey and everybody had to be live on the air and take your phone calls, and if there's no money to do it. And honestly, I have to recognize that many of the younger generation today are not plugged into even FM radio, let alone AM. Unless they're the rare hobbyist, they're listening to their handheld devices. That's where their media and content, come to them each and every day. So radio will have to reinvent itself again, or it will not survive. Here's a little sad number. I look at the number of AM local radio stations that have gone off the air and have mailed their licenses back or had their licenses revoked because they've been off the air for too many years. That's going to continue moving forward, and I think even some FMs will be in the same boat within a couple of years. The landscape is changing, but the one thing that hasn't changed is the heart of man. There's still a need, as I say, for the things that I really feel laid on my heart to do. My concern is the platform and the way to get the job done. If there's still a value in doing this radio program, you better believe that I will continue to do this radio program. So let me know if you're actually listening by contacting us through the website, yourweekendshow.com. That is yourweekendshow.com. Now, coming up this week in the United States, we celebrate Thanksgiving. And I am looking forward to a little time with my family and friends up here in this part of the world we are in the Georgia, Carolina area. And hopefully in about a month from now, we return to Florida. But in honor of this special day we call Thanksgiving, let me close the program on this musical note.
Be
As we come to these last closing moments of the program today, especially for those in the United States as we prepare for this holiday we call Thanksgiving, what are you thankful for this year? I know for many it's going to be a stressful time of travel, airlines, bumper-to-bumper cars, aggravation, all to sit around a big table and eat too much food, maybe watch some football, because it's our tradition that we somehow fight it all to get together with family and friends. You know, my wife and I are staying pretty much put this year. We might gather nearby with some family and friends for a part of the day. And the one thing we are going to avoid entirely is that thing called Black Friday. We will sleep in on Black Friday. We do not choose to go to stores and waste our time, stand in line, because really, I know it's the beginning of the Christmas season, but the Christmas season is vastly more than this, obscene purchase of expensive stuff at the end of the year and standing in lines and fighting. There's a lot more important things to life. Let me know if the show has any meaning for you. I need to know more now than ever because, I'm looking at the time, and as I said last week, using our time wisely. Is doing this program a benefit? If it is, you let me know. Go to yourweekendshow.com. That's yourweekendshow.com. Send an email, bob@yourweekendshow.com, or find us on Facebook at Your Weekend Show. Until next week at this same time, may God richly bless you.
On the air and online at yourweekendshow.com.